All right. Today's episode, I get to talk with somebody that has a really, really interesting background, very smart man, Gary Uematsu, who is the National Technician Training Manager at BMW North America. We have had just such a great relationship with BMW over the years, and had the pleasure of meeting Gary at their conference, their NAT conference down in Vegas a few months ago, and just had such a fun time talking to you, Gary. I think talking about all of the world's problems in our industry and just getting your take on a lot of different things was a true pleasure for me. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You might have a lot of problems, but it's still a great industry. So,
It's still a great industry, and I don't know that I think it's easy to take that for granted at times, but it truly is a great industry and so many great people. When I was down at your conference, that shined through, right? There were just so many great people to talk to and so many great BMW dealers out there. And those of you from the manufacturer, I mean, just everybody is an absolute pleasure to work with. So this should be a fun show to talk through all of that. Let's start by learning a little bit about what you do on your day-to-day life. What is your role at BMW, and can you give us a little bit more detail behind what it is that you do?
yeah, sure. So I am the technical training manager for BMW North America, which now I currently handle BMW mini cars. I help out with Rolls-Royce. I'm in charge of our motorcycle training, body and paint training, and our what we call the step programs, the apprentice type programs, the entry level programs. So we have three different versions of that. I currently have a team of about 72 people around the country. We have five different locations, one being in New Jersey, California, outside of Chicago, and then we have Atlanta, and then we have Spartanburg right next door to the plant. So that team does everything. I mean, we take care of technicians, curriculum, buildings, paying gardeners and landscapers to you name it. My team has something to do with it.
So are you laying out a plan each year as to kind of what you're going to be doing, what you're prioritizing? You've got a lot of things under your umbrella. How do you prioritize, and how do you kind of put that plan of action together for that big team, right? Like, what is it that you're doing there to kind of organize the chaos?
Well, first and foremost, we look at new model launches, be it a bike or car or a program. Anything that's new takes kind of like a spot or a priority, let's say, in our workflow, and we start developing around that. So, as you know, we no nobody is without a launch, a model launch. Very, in between each other, the time has just diminished so much. So we're always on a launch of some sort. So we have a big one coming up in 2026. Probably we're going to launch this thing in Q2, but we're already been working on it for 3-4 months already into 2025. But everything else, we are responsible for the core training, which we call the basic training that technicians would need to go from, let's say, at an entry level all the way to a master technician. So I have a development team that looks at not only how to develop the curriculum, but what are the training modalities? What's the next best thing? Is it just the VR AR stuff? Is there more to it? So it's a loaded question, but it always comes down to deadlines. So we're always
Yeah.
planning for deadlines. Yeah.
So when you're getting it, is it at the same time you're getting an introduction of new tools, or it's kind of everything built into the same tool in terms of how you access the data for the vehicle? Walk me through that piece. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're starting with it, is it kind of a blank canvas each year and you're trying to figure it out, or do things kind of layer from prior years?
Well, let's say for development, which is a big part of what we do, is the central development department is obviously in Munich, and we are very fortunate in the United States that we have our own curriculum, our development team here. Not all markets, not all areas around the world have that, so we're a little bit lucky. But in that, we don't necessarily always get a package like here's the new package for everything new. It comes in piecemeal a lot of times. Sometimes we do get packages, but we can never plan on getting that information at the same time. I mean, they do a great job over there. Obviously, they're under a lot of pressures. Model launches and releases are very critical to our dealers. So we have to try and get what we get and start on the project immediately. And then we've been doing it long enough that we can kind of forecast it. One of the requirements we have are when that model launches, we need to have one technician trained per dealer before it actually gets to the dealer. So we're in this little time crunch. So if we sometimes get that information, 6 months ahead or a year ahead, like I was just describing, that's great. But sometimes we get it 6 weeks or 7 weeks ahead of the launch, and then that becomes a fire drill.
A little more stressful then. And I'm sure you're trying to get a date on the calendar for the training as soon as you can so that the dealers can plan their training. It's a real time crunch that you're dealing with.
It is. That's the other side of it is once we determine when these classes are launches, our dealers obviously need that information. They need to train not just more than, not just one person, but more than one person. So I have what we call regional training centers with regional managers in there, and they handle the scheduling of everything, classes, etc. And the demand is so high for us that we are now scheduling right now past I think into September.
Wow.
So if they don't get on the bandwagon quick enough, they're not going to get a seat for some of those classes.
And how many are teachers that kind of fall under your umbrella that are actually teaching these classes?
So we have it floats, but right around 52 what we call instructor developers, and they are the instructor. Well, there's two, let's say, departments: the instruction, and we call them instructor developers, because regardless, if you're out there instructing and you're reading out of a book, that's not our style. So they're always developing an overview, a lesson plan, or whatever that will fit that particular class and tailor it to that instructor. So we have 52 of them. I have 6 development, what we call developers. And again, they are the ones that concentrate on everything from, basic electricity to what's the latest way we're going to present something.
It is a lot that goes into that. I know just having friends that have taught for OEs or even at schools, I think that's an underrated part of teaching is the preparation that goes into teaching. Even my wife is a third grade teacher, right? And a lot of behind the scenes things happen for any educator to really be prepared. And I'm sure in that scenario where if you are teaching on a new model, it probably comes with its own curveballs each year and trying to learn something different, right?
Yeah, the laugh that we have is we don't even know what breaks yet. So if we had our little black book or big black book and we knew it was going to break, we can train to that, right? So, the first classes, sometimes the veteran technicians, they always know they don't necessarily favor the first classes because, we're still
some things to get
learning.
worked out.
Yeah, we're still learning. And, as it gets better and better and better, a lot of the veterans now kind of switch around with some of the younger guys in class. But regardless, it's, the amount of information that we give to the technicians and the amount of information that the instructor has to retain or develop. I have a funny story that when we hire a lot of technicians, and we're fortunate to hire a lot of BMW technicians that want to make a different career path. And they always, I won't say always, but a pretty good majority of them will come up to me and go, I thought this was an easy job because I know about the car. I work on them every day. You guys give us some material. And then, 6, 8 months later, they come to you, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Because you have to keep 1, 2, 3, 10 steps ahead of everybody else. So a lot of preparation.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking in general. And what's funny is that I think that segues really nicely into hearing about your career path. And you and I talked about this before, but it is really important to me to shine a light on people's career paths of especially successful people in our industry, because you didn't start off like this, right? You didn't start off
Uh,
on the education side. Can you tell us a little bit
yeah.
about how you started
Farthest
off?
thing, farthest thing from the truth. So, um, after high school, I really wanted to go to the music business. Let's say I wanted to be a teacher. So I really kind of danced around it. But back in the old days, there was this thing in California called Proposition 13. It was a tax freeze. So when we got out of high school and started going to college, they cut out all fine arts programs. So time to make a left turn somewhere. And I always loved anything mechanical. I had motorcycles when I was younger, and we didn't have the money to buy new stuff, so I always fixed it or tried to fix it. Long story short, I went to a trade school. I worked, tried to get some money together, went to a trade school, and actually started at a BMW dealer in 1983, late 83. Let's call it 84. As a technician. There was no step program back in those days. There was nothing. You just got hired on, and you hoped you could work on a car one day. And so I did that. I kind of fell into BMW in that I was looking for a job, any job that would pay me, and they were the first ones that said yes. So I stayed there. I stayed there for 10 years. They kind of roundabout way, they ended up selling, and the person that bought the franchise opened it several miles down the road on the opposite direction of where I lived. So a couple of us decided, well, let's try and start a little independent repair shop. BMW specialist. We were very fortunate that they left the area, so we stayed in the area. We were fortunate enough to purchase everything from shelves in the parts department to equipment that they didn't want. So that was an excellent segue. And then we did that for 5 years, and met a lot of great contacts and customers, and uh, we were able to sell it. And so we kind of looked at the blue sky aspect of that. I took that money, and like I said, I'm a mechanical guy, so I purchased a Snap-on franchise. I was driving around in the
Interesting.
trucks. Yeah, driving around in trucks, and those two ventures right there taught me more about business and what I do today than I think anything else.
Yeah.
Just jumping in there, right, with both feet and experience the highs and the lows is the best education. Um, I'll
Was
tell
there
you the
anything
snap.
eye-opening? Was there anything eye-opening when you go from that technician to ownership role? Because it's funny, I have all of these conversations, and I've had all of these conversations over the years, and so many people are like, "Man, if I had known this, or I had known this, I might have gone a different path or done something different." But anything that was truly eye-opening to you as you went into business for yourself?
Yeah, you never stop learning. The even if I look today and I'll be talking to somebody, and we'll see some waste, or we'll see just something that could be done maybe a little bit more efficient. And I always have this little tongue in cheek. I was like, that person had to take that $20 out of their pocket to pay for it. They would think about it completely different. And that all stems from, oops, made a mistake. I got to own up to it when you own a business. And then you got to make the customer happy. You got to make everything right. And that develops this thing. And we talked about this. That's where I started to develop, I thought, a business sense, but more or less trying to look at the big picture, critical thinking. I mean, all those things that you're taught in school that you thought you'd never use inherently just comes back in when it's your responsibility or your business, or basically when it's your funds.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot over the years, where I would not be what you would consider a good student when I was growing up. I started off early really well, and then as I got to high school, I think my interest was just not in school anymore. I was same as you. I wanted to
Yeah,
work on cars, and I wanted to just kind of play around, right?
yeah,
And I tell my son this. I've got an 8-year-old son that regardless of the subject that you're learning, there's so much importance in in the critical thinking aspect of learning, right? And being curious and really truly trying to understand something, even if the topic is something that you don't feel like you're going to need down the road. I fought with that with algebra in school. I remember thinking, going through algebra class, like, when am I ever going to use this? And in the back of my head, I just thought I was going to be a technician for the rest of my life, right? Like even at 14 or 15 years old, whenever it was, I couldn't understand why they were making me take this class. And I spent more time focusing on that rather than just trying to learn algebra. And so, looking back at it, I wish I had taken a different approach, in that, when you're trying to learn something, you're forcing your brain to think through problems, and to, at some level, slow down enough to understand a problem, and truly comprehend what it is that you're trying what they're trying to teach you. So I think what an excellent point right there, because that is something that I struggled with for a long time. And looking back, if I could give my younger self advice, that would be the
Yeah.
piece, is like, don't focus so much on the actual subject that you're trying to learn. Focus on trying to get better, and trying to learn something that maybe you didn't know before.
Yeah, that's like they say, right? If you can bottle that experience and sell it, we'd be millionaires. The experience is the key. Because even as I went throughout this career, again, I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing. But the experience that you gain, really good mentors and coaches. I've had really good leadership here at BMW, and that's very key. And that's one of the reasons why I never really ventured anywhere else. And I've always stayed in training throughout my BMW career, because to me, it's really rewarding. You see somebody that is the first day, and maybe the first day they ever moved away from home, they're at one of our facilities, and then today he's literally the vice president of a dealer group. And it all started out from being a technician, which is great, right? I mean, you can stay a technician the rest of your career and move up through the internal dealer structure, become a lead tech foreman, manager, et cetera, et cetera. You can specialize. There's a lot of people I know that went back, and they got fascinated in the engineering part of it, and went that route, to people that went to communications and marketing because they just love the car business.
Yeah. And it started with the foundation as a technician. I think that
Yeah.
is a very underrated aspect of becoming a technician, is really the amount of opportunities it opens up for you. It's not, if you do choose to be a technician for the rest of your career, I think that's, even that in itself, right? Like, I still geek out when I see a true professional technician, and I've seen a lot of them in BMW dealerships, where you go in, they're polished, their tool setup is perfectly organized. I am oddly just fascinated with toolbox organization right now, for whatever reason. And you when you see that truly professional technician that approaches their job the right way, I don't, for me personally, there's not much better than seeing that, because I have such a high respect level for that
Right.
technician. And similar to what you were saying, I do think there's so many other avenues to go. And again, talking to my younger self, I didn't know that when I was coming into the industry, right? Or I grew up in the industry. We grew up in an independent shop, but I didn't know there was life beyond being a technician, and doing breaks, and doing, the kind of the little stuff. Of course, I wanted to be good at advanced diagnostics, just like a lot of people, but it's
Right.
hard. And so,
Yes.
it's just, all of that to say, it is so cool to see the opportunities that are available to technicians right now. And I think there's even more coming, right? With the advancements in technology, there's a lot there.
Yeah, you said it all right there. There's so much out there. I have colleagues that started the same way I did, and they do things I could never imagine would come from a
Yeah.
technician's background. But one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to deal with are with schools quite a bit, and I think some of the, well, we know our best kept secret I wish everybody would know, specifically career counselors and advisors. And, this business is difficult. It's not, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You get in there and these cars are not easy to fix. And that's where I see where, like I said, it's lifelong learning. And the other thing is you go to a dealer and you see the younger kids and they are head to toe soaked in whatever, right? And you look at the diagnosticians and they have like iron shirts, or they like very much so, they're using different aspects of their experience and their learning. And it's like I said, it can be lucrative. I mean, you have to work hard. A lot of the shops are still paid on flat rate, and that's a controversy in itself. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's just the way that the industry is. But to me, if the early you and me were to also maybe have some guidance, I didn't smoke in the bathroom as a kid, but I was basically one of those kids that didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, and the career counselors, reflecting back, weren't really career counselors. So, and we've had workshops with career counselors in Woodcliff Lake, and I will tell you, and I don't want to sound disparaging, but some of them thought we were actually putting on a show on what a technician could become. And we had some of our guys that were started out as technicians and into instructors. Now they're in the field, they're field service engineers, and it's a little bit foreign to some of the career counselors that still not a path that they think would be, let's say, worthy. I don't know if that's a good term to use, worthy of,
Yeah.
of one of the brighter students, and but it's slowly changing. Mike Rowe does a great job of kind of exposing, and you guys and all these different avenues of communication are helping. But I think now, specifically with what's happened in the world in the last 5 to 10 years, it is skilled trades have to be top and center. You can have, like they say, you can design anything you want, but nobody can build it, nobody can fix it, nobody can maintain it. We had a problem. So, and again,
Yeah.
like I said, you don't stick there and stay there unless you want to, but it just opens up so many more avenues.
I think well, one, I hadn't, I didn't know that you guys had done that with the career counselors. I think that is such a smart move in general that we as an industry could do a better job at. If they're not understanding what it is that we do, we need to really get in front of them and show them,
Right.
right? And I do know, just from my own experience, I had the same thing you did, right? Like, where going through, at the time they were school counselors, and they've I think shifted in their name, but it was very much an experience where it was like, oh, okay, this kid can't do anything else, let's put him in automotive, right? And
And
that is
shop.
not right. Yeah, yeah, you go to shop class, you go, go do some woodworking or something. And i I think it is so imperative for our industry to get in front of school counselors, in front of school leadership as a whole, could be a superintendent or the school board or whoever. And that's not just a Wrenchway or Micro or whoever, like our entire industry. We've got to do a better job at that, of getting
Right.
out in front of these folks and helping them, helping show them how smart these technicians are. And we talked earlier about the critical thinking aspect of the job, and it is such an important piece, even from, say, a lube tech's perspective, or from a entry level technician's perspective, of being able to think through a problem and not just try to force something, right? And I think I was guilty of this early in my career, where maybe that nut isn't going on that bolt just the way that it should, and what do? You get a bigger air gun, right? And try to get it on. Rather than actually getting the tap and die set out and
Yeah.
cleaning the threads up. I
Yeah.
think there's some level of that maturity that happens over time, to where you're not just trying to force things and ultimately create more problems for yourself. But that's where that critical thinking aspect is such an important piece of a good technician.
Yes, we build critical thinking into everything we do, curriculum wise, program wise. And even at the beginning, we are very fortunate. BMW really covets hands-on training. We're not one of those manufacturers that just throws a bunch of videos out there. I mean, we do have virtual training. I'm not going to say we don't, but the majority of our training is face to face. And when you see a entry level, early, let's call them a student at this point, and they're using a ratchet and they're trying to get behind something in the contours of their body to try to get that thing on there instead of maybe just grabbing an extension. Uh, I mean, it's I don't want to say it's comical, but then you kind of look at that and goes, that's the experience that he never has had. He might have just got that ratchet set 2 months ago, as opposed to guys that have been using for 20 years. But that's what we look at, is what experience can we relate to our technicians. And our technicians, for us, they are our customers. We look at them strictly as a customer. We want to serve them the best. We want to make their experience the best. The way we train and the modalities we use at the entry level versus what we have now called the elite levels are totally two opposites. We require certifications for literally everything we do. We have since about 2018 worked very closely with ASC to develop our own certifications. They are ASC. They go to Prometric centers to take them, but we wanted to use the. We're not good question writers. We may be in training, but we didn't. We don't know exactly. We don't have that technician base. ASC has hundreds of thousands of test takers, and we have 10,000 test takers. So we learn from, long story short, we learn from them. And then we start to look at how can we incorporate our technology, our acronyms, nomenclature, everything into tests that we can give to our technicians. And again, what we call, they're numerical, 1, 2, 3, 4, the ones that are, what we call the BMW 1 test versus the BMW 5, 6 test, there's a huge difference in the way those questions are written. And and actually the data aspect, because my team, we have an operations team as well. We look at that data and we determine, is that are they getting low scores because of the technician, of the test question, or is it the training? And so we always look in the mirror, and we have to make sure, one, BMW is one of the most sophisticated cars in the world. Electronically, I think they are the most sophisticated. So we need the technicians to look at it that way. And again, the amount of critical thinking that is inherent, we don't kind of look at it now and go, well, there's the module and there's the critical thinking part. Now we've been doing it and we understand what that curriculum development and let's say workshop development is. It's just built in. It's inherent now.
Is that something that when a student comes to class that you're telling them up front that, hey, we are challenging you to be a better critical thinker? Or is this just something that you've developed and it's a part of your curriculum, but you're not necessarily advertising that's a piece of the training?
Probably more the latter. We don't necessarily, like if you were to do a word search, we probably wouldn't see critical thinking on every page. But if you were to read the material, you would probably understand not only reading the material, but why we set up our training levels and paths and certifications on the reasons why we did it, is to, again, take that quote book knowledge, mix it with some hand skills, mix it with experience. And you have to be a critical thinker to get through it, because we always hear, well, that guy can't take tests. Well, we're going to help them. We have classes or online learning to help them take a test. And nobody likes to take. I hate taking tests as well.
Me too.
That's just part of the training process. We actually came from an era where we didn't require a lot of certifications. You basically, if you went from zero to hero because you took enough classes. And I think we're in a lot better position today than we once were, as far as technician skills. And obviously, the cars have evolved tremendously in the last 5, 10, 15 years to something that the average technician out there, they just can't jump in there. They're going to have to study. They're going to have to look at things differently. Our diagnostics are different. The amount of networking we have is probably greater, and I'm not familiar with every manufacturer, but greater than most. And so what one technician does at one OE coming to us, we don't see a lot of that crossover as much as I thought we would, because if they are successful with another brand, and they're at the top, they're there, right? Why come to us? This is a tongue in cheek. Why come to us and have to study again, to achieve that same level, let's say.
Yeah. And I think you're seeing that amongst all manufacturers, right? Once you kind of choose that path of that brand, it's hard to reverse course, just because it is a lot more time. You put it from a technician's perspective, a lot of time and effort into getting to that status. And so
Yeah.
I do think there's some stickiness to that, right? Where once you kind of choose that path, that you kind of, I think a lot of times are loyal to that path. Technicians, have you checked out WrenchWay yet? It's a free online community for automotive and diesel professionals just like you. Whether you're job hunting or just looking to connect with other industry professionals, WrenchWay makes it easy to explore opportunities, stay updated on industry news, and help promote the technician profession. With WrenchWay, you can see detailed job info you care about before you apply or interview, stay in the loop with what's happening in the auto and diesel community, explore technician compensation in your area and across the U.S., track your certifications, and much more. Join the WrenchWay community for free at wrenchway.com or download the WrenchWay mobile app. Links are in the show notes. Now, with the training itself, how did that evolve over time? Did it go from maybe, say, 10 years ago being more theory based and more maybe component ID based to, like, how did that evolution of critical thinking come into training?
I think inherently it's always been there. It's just that it has evolved, with facilitation technique. It's evolved with the car. So, for us, even so, when I went to training as a technician, for BMW, it was few and far between. There weren't a lot of classes. It was a lot of demonstrations. So the car may have been apart already. You're actually looking at components, a lot of wiring diagrams, a lot of classroom time, very traditional. And then as we started to evolve a little bit more, we had to be certified as facilitators. And so there were steps that BMW always looked at as how to make that experience better. And then I stepped into this role in 2015. And at that time, my boss had some concerns from dealers that, maybe training wasn't at its pinnacle. And we took the time out to reanalyze everything, and we completely revamped the training, what we call the training path. So there is no one moment. I think it's all incremental that we look at as the cars evolve. The technician has to evolve and the training has to evolve. So what we do today is obviously totally different than what we did 5 years ago, because the cars are so much different. And then we look at generational learning, where so a lot of thought is put into, well, that generation doesn't like this, and this generation is better than this. And I always sit back and we kind of laugh sometimes, because all of that theory is gone when that particular generation gets married, has a house, wants a boat. They all become the same. They all have the same. If they were a little bit deficient on learning here, boy, they get really efficient, because of the like I said, the lucrative career you can have being a technician here.
I refer back to this example. I was at a conference once, and there was a presenter talking about the generational differences, and the lady that was giving the presentation had a cover of Time magazine up on big screen, and she had the date covered on it, and it was the prior generation complaining about the
Oh
next
yeah,
generation, right?
yeah,
And when she removed the to show the date, it was actually whatever the generation above baby boomers was complaining about baby boomers, and it was a
right,
lot a lot of the same things that they complain about now. I do agree. I think it's different seasons in your life, and
right.
it really depends on where you're at, and that there'll always be some level of that divide there. But I couldn't agree more. I think we're more alike
Yeah.
than most people would suggest.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even think about it. All that millennial poor group, right? All those millennials, well, they're starting to retire. So they've a lot of them very successful careers. Being a millennial or a Gen X or whatever the case may be. So um, yeah, it's I'm sure there are differences when they go to work. I'm looking at from the training aspect, and but we're more alike than we are different.
Oh, 100%. Now, I did love the example that you used of a time where that critical thinking aspect comes into play, and I'm interested to hear if there are other opportunities for instructors, and maybe just those instructors that are listening to this episode that aren't even involved with BMW. I just love the fact that you use the example of a student trying to get into a place with the ratchet and not fully comprehending, hey, if I just add an extension here, it's going to make my
Yeah.
life a lot easier. I feel like there would be a lot of opportunities for that when you see the students going hands on, and you're able to quickly identify, hey, maybe we think about this a little differently. And that's where teachers are so special. At least the really, really good teachers are so special to be able to identify maybe when a student is struggling, and then coming to help walk them through it. And maybe if it's not their natural inclination to have that critical thinking, walking them through it so that they truly understand, okay, why should I look at this differently? How should I look at this differently? There's got to be a lot of opportunities when you see a student working hands on to be able to help guide them there.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a lot of let's say from high school, secondary, post-secondary, that era of training, and the majority of the instructors are so passionate about what they do. I think a lot of it stems from, you know, how much are they allowed to flex their creativity? In certain institutions, you have to follow certain things to the letter, and which could be good, could be bad. I have my opinion on that. To let's say to us, where I mean, we are never told that that's the only way. If that is a process and a procedure, prove me wrong, and if it's better, we're definitely going to do it. And that is one of the things. And again, I'm biased. That's one of the things about with BMW is that they do allow, actually in our department, I guess every department, in our department, they do allow that creativity to drive the department. So, kind of like that career path for technicians that we're talking about. Internally, there's a career path for the instructors, or, technicians generally come into the training department. It's a natural progression if they want to get out of the field or try something different. And then from instruction, let's say they can branch off into working for after sales. They can branch off and become what we call TSEs, technical service guys. The field guys. They can branch off, become product engineers. Some of them go into the marketing side or the admin side. So it's so vast now that the I haven't checked recently, but about 60, I'd say high 60 percentile of our instructors were technicians, not solely BMW, but the majority of them probably BMW. And then as they move on, I always like to kid some of my colleagues that, stop stealing my guys, but because they have to, as an instructor, they have to learn everything about a car, not just how to put a part on or not just to read a bulletin. So they, again, being an instructor builds that mindset, and then they move on and they go out through all aspects of our company.
I know it's not one size fits all, most likely, but what does the background of one of your teachers look like? Is it that they were a technician and then they went back to get a bachelor's degree and are in, or do maybe that's not necessarily the case? I guess I don't know this part at all. Uh, can you give me a little background on that side?
All of the above. So
All of the above.
all of our, let's say you look at our job requirements or our educational requirements. Uh, Again, we base a lot on experience. So if that particular technician didn't have the opportunity to get, further in their degree programs, but they are really good at what they do, there's a place for you. If you did go through that, or you went through the educational process going through school, there's a place for you. So we look at more or less, uh, I'd like to say, the person and what their skills are when they're in front of us, rather than strictly off of a resume. Now, obviously, BMW does have standards that you have to have X amount of certificates, or you have to be a master technician. There's those basic requirements, but as far as getting the position, let's say, it is definitely up to the person.
I love that. I love that approach just in general, not judging it solely on maybe their education, but
Yeah.
the type of person they are. And I think it probably allows you to get to some really really high performers that way, that maybe just didn't take the traditional 4-year path.
Yeah, and Jay, that's not exclusive to here. Our dealers do exactly the same thing, because the career path of a dealer as a technician, some of those guys may have started as the parts guy or the parts runner, and now the parts manager. And so I think, and again, I'm not very versed on all the other OEs and et cetera, but I see that quite a bit of the dealers. They are very good. Our dealers are excellent at promoting within. And, like I said, I see the one kid that started our program, went to a dealer as a brand new technician, and now he's managing something or he's directing something. And I see that a lot at our dealerships.
I do too. And we talk a lot internally at Wrenchway about this, but the importance of sharing those stories, because they are so cool, and it does give hope to a young person that when they're coming in, that hey, you know what, there aren't many industries that are better than ours, that if you come in and you work your tail off, you're going to be rewarded for it, and you're going to have opportunities within this industry that you might not even know about yet. And the more we can shine a light on those stories of maybe that person that started off as a porter and worked their way up, I think it gives us some ammo when we do go back to kind of follow up on the discussion we had on getting in front of school counselors. Like there, if we have good tangible evidence to show the outside world what it's all about, then maybe you don't fight the skepticism of a parent that doesn't want their kid to go into this industry, right? Like it gives you some good examples to be able to show off.
It does. It's tough. We have a department that recruits, and they tell me the stories of, man, just the roadblocks they encounter. And you think, me being part of this group, is like, wow, there's like beautiful buildings, and you go into the training center and everything's nice, and then you would still, you know you hear the stories where like, wow, no, I don't want them to go that direction. I'd rather they not get dirty, or you hear it all. And I
Yeah.
feel for those guys and girls that help us recruit, because they're trying to change a mindset that has been there for I don't know, hundreds of years now, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's tough. It's tough. So
It's crazy because if it's even happening to BMW, which in my opinion has one of the cleaner reputations, high performance cars, that it's a cool brand. it's got a lot of things going for it, and to still have parents that are resistant to their child going into this career field, it just blows my mind, because I think in a lot of ways it's short-sighted on the parent side or the school counselor side. But it I think I'm a big fan of just constantly looking in the mirror, right? And I think when you do look in the mirror and you see that we're fighting that battle, it's maybe because we haven't done enough to educate these people, the outside world. And granted, they've got to be open to listening to what we have to say, right? And I think that's one of the battles we have with a lot of school counselors, is that maybe they aren't open to listening because they're not interested in cars, or they're not interested in what our field has to offer. So it is looking for different opportunities to get out in front of them in a way that isn't pushy, but also kind of gets our point across to the fact that, like, hey, you as a school counselor, your job is to kind of put people in the right path to where it's going to lead them to the most success.
Yeah.
And I've had so many friends that, one of my best friends he started at a 4-year school, absolutely hated it, and is now like he quit after a year and is one of the most successful electricians that I know. And
Yeah.
it's just, if he didn't feel like he had to, I've had so many conversations with him about this. If he didn't feel like he had to go to a 4-year school, he wouldn't have. But the outside pressures for him to go were immense, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure on him.
Yeah, but Jay, the other side of it too is, when we have these graduations for our programs, and you do get the parents that they will admit I didn't really want my kid to go in this direction, but then they saw how much they had to study, how much they had to learn, and the differences that they were seeing in their kids mature, because now they're entering the workforce. That's another part of what we do in training is, hey, when you get to that workforce, then it's not going to be like this. So you gotta start thinking about that. But they will come up to me, or the people at the graduation, and they are really like impressed and thankful they that their kid had went this route, because they've never seen that kind of, shouldn't say never, they may not have seen that kind of motivation coming from something other than maybe watching videos or playing games or something. But and a lot of it is passion. You mentioned the brand. I mean, the brand is hard to resist. I mean, we make some pretty cool cards. And I
Yes.
think a lot of the kids that come in, I always call them kids, but that's just me. A lot of the entry level people that come in may not be a big BMW enthusiast. Maybe they're just looking for a job. And then the majority of them do. And then the ones that, their dad had a BMW, they worked on them and they wanted to go to trade school. They wanted to hit our program. Man, they have a path figured out. So we kind of see, multiple aspects of this.
And you guys do a fantastic job of stoking the fire of that BMW passion, and getting somebody in, and really getting them to buy in to the brand and to the
Yeah.
excitement that comes behind that brand. So it is nice, I'm sure, from your end to say, hey, you know what, we've got all of this stuff going for us, and you can come be a part of this really really exciting thing,
Yeah.
and have a lot of opportunities. I just think I think that is such a cool part. Now, the one additional thing that I would ask on the training side, and this comes from maybe me sitting in on some of the advisory committee meetings that I've sat in over the years. There are a lot of pressures on, especially tech schools right now, to fit a lot of curriculum into 2 years. And with the introduction, and it's not even really the introduction, but the advancement of ADAS, you're adding this whole other element to automotive repair, and it's hard to figure out where to trim the fat in a 2-year program, right? Because we've sat in and it's not like you're saying, okay, we're not going to teach about carburetors anymore. Okay, but like that was a long time ago that we were talking about that. But now you're getting to the point in that 2-year span to where everything is super important and critical to what they're going to see and experience when they get into a shop. how do you take, whether it's through your program or through some other program, and kind of try to get that to seamlessly integrate into your training path once they get into the dealership?
Yeah, a lot of the core schools, or the secondary, post-secondary schools, that's a tough job, because if they only had to cater to OEs, they can tailor their training. But they still supply technicians to the aftermarket, and everything out there, the bus industry and the truck industry. So it's very diverse as far as what a technician should know and the specialties of it. But when you look at the core asset, the guys and girls that know how to fix these cars are really good at, man, they study. They look at it. It's not something, it's not like like football players. The best guy isn't the guy that doesn't practice the least, he practices the most, or they practice the most. In this industry as well, the people that we see that are really good diagnosticians, man, they know the basics inside and out. And ADOS is a fantastic technology. We look at it from the technician side of it. And I don't want this to sound very basic at all, but it's a box of wires. If you don't know what wire or what signals are going through those wires to that box, first and foremost, and if it's getting from point A to point B, rust, corrosion, etc., you're going to have a tough time. But all of our I would say a lot of our diagnostics, some of the first things that it looks at are wire tests. It is this signal getting to this module? Is that module returning? We don't need to interpret, a lot of times, we don't need to interpret what the ones and zeros are, or whatever. We have to understand that, there's 5 or 6 basics, well, maybe now 7 or 8 basic signals that go through a car. And a lot of them have been going through that car since Henry Ford. And if we just understand those basic, electricity is virtual for a lot of people. So it's harder to pick up if you just don't get the concept. And one of the things that we always concentrate on from the first day I think a student comes in our door is voltage drops. And you hear the guys, well, I'll just use this thing I bought off the truck. And that meter, those numbers, and understanding, what that load is still, I would say, 50% of the battle on most of our cars.
Yeah, hand up, I was one of them that was guilty of that as a young technician, right? Of you wanted to get to the advanced diag piece, but I think I can be very honest about the fact that I didn't have the basics down. And it was funny, many years later I worked for a manufacturer and would go to the manufacturing training. I was actually the one facilitating the manufacturing training, so we do it through a local tech school. And this is the beauty in a good teacher, is that I was sitting there one day, and I'm not even working on cars anymore, and having this teacher explain it in a way that simplified it so much that you couldn't screw it up, right? And I think it was like a light switch went off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know why this didn't occur to me before, or why, going back to the critical thinking aspect of, you're not just buying that special tool, or that even the multimeter or whatever it is, just, it's not going to tell you, it could tell you anything, but if you don't understand what it's telling you, then you're not going to be able to solve the problem. And I think it's so funny, because I experienced that myself. And again, that goes back to the appreciation of great technicians, is that those are the ones that do truly understand that. And they, like that, they like something like a voltage drop test, which I think every instructor across America and probably across the world is trying to get through through the skulls of their students, right? It's just being able to get them to understand why they need to know this in the first place, and then landing conceptually, like, this is how you do it. And those educators that can do that have a special ability, because it is something that is truly unique and pretty cool.
you always fall back, right? When it starts, people are getting in the weeds. I don't care if they're techs, instructors, or whatever. And I always look at them and go, you got to go back to Sesame Street. You got to go back to making it as simple as possible. Once they understand that, then you can give them all the bells and whistles. And again, like I said, our training paths, they assume a certain amount of skills because we don't have a, let's say, a level where somebody could come in straight off the street, never worked on a car at all. We assume a certain amount of skill level. Generally, is coming from the post-secondary side, or the experience of maybe, like, let's say, the parts guy that works his way up to the lube rack, and then it's getting on the line, and then the dealer wants to send him to our training. We see a good progression that way. And But yeah, the assumption of those skills, so we're a little bit spoiled because we generally get better technicians to start with. But a lot of that again is up to the technician, how far they want to advance. It's not easy. We get a lot of maybe hate mail about why do we have to have certifications, and but it's when you, again, if you step back and you look at this objectively, when I was asked to look at how we can build certifications, I looked at the welding industry where, you got the guy that can put together with a stick welder, I don't know, some pipes, to the guy that welds on nuclear stuff. And same basic skill set, same basic concepts, but, the actual skill levels per, let's say, per experience or level that they go up is tremendous. And, we can have an early tech change the oil, or an early tech, diagnosing something that's very, very critical. I mean, they all basically have the same mindset. It's just that, what are they doing to make their skills better I think is the hard part being a technician these days as well.
Couldn't agree more. Now, as we get close to the end of this, I want to ask you a question that I think some of it is probably almost, I don't want to say rhetorical, but common sense. But I want to talk about what traits you see in great technicians. You've seen a lot of technicians over the years. We talked a lot about critical thinking today. That's obviously, I think, an essential trait for if that person out there is listening and they want to be the best technician. Critical thinking is right there. I would say maybe professionalism and just being kind of viewing it as your craft
Right.
is pretty essential.
Yeah.
Growth mindset of always, you talked about being able to, if you're that diagnostician, you're maybe putting in work after hours and doing your studying and really trying to comprehend. Is there anything else that you see in the best of the best that maybe if that young person is out there listening today, that maybe they could work on and they could strive to be?
Well, everything you mentioned is critical. What segment and doses of it are up to each individual, but if they don't have that, again, continued learning, if they are great critical thinkers, and they don't have, maybe that's 10% of their learning, and then maybe they have to develop that kind of skill set. Maybe that's 60%. That person that's always looking to be the next step better. When I talk to these really good technicians, one thing that they have in mind is, and some of them, it really depends on, what the shop environment is, and where they are in the management. Let's say there's all these different aspects. So more often than not, they are looking at, how can I be better? Can I be a better diagnostician? Can I be from a diagnostician to the shop foreman, from the shop foreman to, when I see those type of guys and girls in the dealerships, I think that's what stands out the most. And they don't have to be the most boisterous. They don't have to be the one that's always raising their hand. But when you just talk to them, you can tell that their mindset is into learning. And if it wasn't, they'd kind of stagnate. And if their learning was here in 2025 and it's stagnated, and then what happens when the cars come out in 2028? For a simple scale there. If you don't raise that level of your learning to meet that level of technology, Yeah, and I don't mean to say this disparaging, numbers haven't changed as, let's say, in quote accounting in a long, long time. There's obviously a lot of aspects to accounting, but the numbers haven't changed on how you figure out P&Ls and et cetera. But that same concept, saying that same thing, and I'm talking entry level now, and that same concept or thinking for an entry level technician starts today, but again, and it's tomorrow is different, and then like you said, ADOS, and then we're coming out with all these different types of consumer product, what we call product info, which how to push the buttons and what the screen looks like, and what we're having on some of our new cars. So it requires that entry level technician stay engaged. And where and again, I don't mean to be disparaging at all, is the entry level when you learn the P&L aspect of it, let's say. Obviously, things change and it gets more sophisticated as companies grow, but that kind of stays the same. So it's very, I'm backing myself into a corner. The skill sets are start out kind of the same, but they accelerate at different rates.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for anybody too, is even if you find yourself maybe getting behind or something like that, don't feel like your head is underwater. There's always opportunities to learn. There's always opportunities to get better, regardless of where you're at. And I say it a lot. I think a lot of times we'll put all technicians in one bucket and assume that they have similar backgrounds and and nothing could be further from the truth, right? Everybody's different. And even for you, if you're out there listening to this and you're struggling with something, just know that that's okay. Like it's part of kind of working through a problem. And a lot of times that's where the true learning comes too, right? Is if you have a problem and you kind of work your way through it, you'll know how to do it better the next time. And I think that's all part of that growth of an individual and just getting better in general.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Well, Gary, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We talked about how many different hats you wear at BMW, and the fact that you took some time out today to join us was just such a fun conversation, and always love your perspective and just appreciate you coming on.
Thanks. It's a pleasure. These type of things need to happen more. Not obviously with me, but with everybody, just to expose, like we say, let our industry shine more. It's not always about selling the cars, fixing the car, ordering the parts, how to do inventory. So yeah, anything I can do to help, I'm there. And if I can encourage anybody else to get involved into every aspect of the business, just do it.
Well, thank you for joining us. That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.